Hello, it's Paul Green doing another one of our regular Focus On panel, where we bring together a selection of experts in their field and just sort of pose a question to them that we then explore in a sort of like open format. If you're tuning into this or watching on the replay, feel free to put comments on whatever platform you're tuning in on, and we'll do our best to answer them in the moment or answer them on any replay that we do. So without further ado, I'm just going to go around the screen and let the panelists introduce themselves. So Jackie, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Jackie Sherman, a consultant's consultant. I mentor and coach small business owners, particularly consultants who have left employment and set up their own business. So, and I help them with their business development. I'm also the chair of the Green Business Network locally, which is a charity with a vision that every business in this area will have a green strategy.
Excellent. That keeps you busy then, Jackie. Mari, what about you?
I'm Mari from Tom Rum Team Coaching. I'm a team performance coach, which means that I work with leadership teams to help them achieve more. I specialise in working in scale-up businesses because that's my background to some degree, where there's been a rapid period of growth and the business is doing great, but the structure of the leadership team, for example, has been left behind. So it's helping them achieve greater cohesion in the team.
Thank you very much. And not as advertised, because unfortunately Joe couldn't join us today, but a last-minute stand-in. Chris, do you want to let people know who you are and what you do?
Well, Paul, you can call me Joe if you want, if it makes you happy. And makes
you can. I thought you were only Joe at the weekends, Chris, but
just Saturday nights. As many of you know, I'm Chris Dammert from Data Sense. We are, for want of a better term, data protection specialists. We provide IT support, cybersecurity, and GDPR policy and procedures. And one of our core bits for business is making sure that companies have an IT strategy in place.
Excellent. Well, you're on track then with the topic for today. So really, the question is, is strategy important for SMEs? Is it something that maybe strategy is a scary word for SMEs? What is strategy in a sort of small business context? So I'm going to come to you first, Mari. What are your views on strategy within small businesses?
Well, for me, the strategy is where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much, what's the point? Tends to be the expression that I use. Why are you here? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to make the business owner into a multimillionaire? Are you trying to build a future for your children? Are you you want to be the best in class? There's a whole range of things that might be the reason for your business. And I think quite often within small businesses that gets lost in the noise of actually delivering. That they have a tendency to forget what their purpose was in the first place. Mm-hmm. And certainly from a teaming perspective, it's really important that for a team to be effective, they know why they're doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And what they're aiming for. So for me, yes, strategy is essential.
Okay.
I wouldn't think it's an opposing view, but that is my view.
Okay. Jackie, what are your thoughts?
Very similar, surprisingly.
You can't just say ditto, otherwise it'll be a very short discussion.
Fine. No, I always think it starts with the vision, doesn't it? If you have a vision, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to get out of this business? Why are you in this business? Then the strategy is the road you use to get there. And there might be lots of different ways you can get there. And it's choosing the optimum one for you. So I think the real value is that everybody knows what road they're going on. Everyone who's involved in the business. And it helps to keep you straight and pointed towards your vision. There may be obstacles and issues that get in the way, deviations needed, but always you're heading to achieve the same aim. Okay. So I think strategy is absolutely vital. Also, it informs you of all the things you need to know and need to think about in your business, which I'm sure we'll go into a bit later. Yeah.
Quite possibly. Who knows? Chris, what are your thoughts?
Strangely enough, very much similar to my learning colleagues are here. It's Mary that really did touch on it. It's the point of where you are now and where do you want to get to, and what's that journey. You can't, you can drive from where you are to anywhere, and you'll get there eventually if you go in a straight line. But you need that roadmap. You need that strategy of how you're going to get there. So in anything, it's important to have that plan, that strategy, to make sure you know what you want to achieve. What's your, if you're thinking really long term, what is your exit goal? I think Mari said it. If you want to make the business, did you start your business because you want to be a multi-millionaire, best in class, whatever it happens to be? You need to know what the end goal is and then find that route to get there.
So sticking with you for a minute, Chris, because obviously around about a year or so ago, you became Data Sense, and that was different people coming together to effectively form a separate company. So what was that like for you? Because presumably you had to have a sort of synergy and meeting of minds in order to sort of like take Data Sense forward as a business. So how did you go about that?
Well, I mean, the start of it comes down to, I've set the business up, what are we now, 17, coming up to 18 years ago, because I wanted it to be a bigger entity than just me. I was getting to the point where I'd plateaued and I knew that the only way to progress was either acquisition or merger. Didn't really have the funds to go and buy another IT company, and chances are someone selling one, certainly going into the pandemic, was selling it because they had issues with it. So I didn't have the time then to go and fix someone else's problems. So in terms of Data Sense, we sat around the table, we said what we wanted and to be the end goal for it, which is ultimately to sell it for millions of pounds. We now then have regular meetings. We see where we are, we see where we still want to be, and we come up with a strategy to get there. So whether it's focusing on one part of the business that's not performing, or looking at the whole and saying, right, we need to do X, Y, and Z to move it forward to get to the next point.
Okay, thank you. So in your experience of working with small businesses or small to medium-sized businesses, when you start working with them, do they have a strategy in place? Is it something that's a bit alien to them? And if they haven't got a strategy in place, what would you say gets in the way of them being more strategic rather than operational in their business? Jackie, I'll come to you first.
I think the word strategy frightens some people off. When you explain what it is, then people come on board with it. It's seen as being something that large corporates do rather than small businesses. So I think that the first thing is to take away the fear of this thing called strategy. And I think sometimes the more you read, the more complicated it seems to get. It's getting underneath that and making it simple for people. That would be my main thought. Yeah, but everyone needs a strategy. They may not call it that.
Okay. What about you, Mari? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, I mean, all that strategy means is having a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not, but I distinctly remember this conversation has sort of thrown it up for me, really, is being asked whether or not I considered myself to be a strategic leader, and whether or not I felt I was strategic in the business that I used to work in. And I remember just thinking, well, I don't really know what that means. What does that mean? And again, it's so my experience is that it's not, it's quite often time within a small business, in that all of the effort and energy is keeping the wolf from the door, is making sure the numbers are right, and there's not a lot of time given to how will we sustain this. Let's just keep running really quickly, and then hopefully it will be all right.
Yeah.
And so certainly that's my experience personally, and often with clients, the value they get from actually just sitting back and thinking about the business. It's very impressive that DataSense have, already set up that process. But I think that comes from the fact that it was several smaller businesses effectively uniting, wasn't it? So you had a very clear goal. But yeah, quite often businesses are started as an idea or as an alternative to employment, it's, well, let's see if I can survive, and then it's 3 years down the road, and it's like, well, why are we doing this? What's the point? And particularly when you start employing a lot of people, as Chris said, I didn't really mention about getting out of the business, but that is something that is, what is your exit plan? How, or does your business die with you? Which is fine. It's just whether or not that's the case for me.
Okay, so Chris, of your focus is mainly on sort of like an IT strategy, but when you go in and work with businesses, do you have a sense that the business has an overall strategy, or have they just brought you in just to do an isolated project and make sure their IT is in line?
It can be a bit of a combination of the two. I can go into some businesses and they've just got me in there to sort the IT out, because, quite frankly, the whole business is in a mess because they have no strategy, no planning of where they're going. Mari said about it, people set up a business because they don't want to do a full-time job, and that's kind of what I did. When I left my last real job, as I always call it, where I was working for someone else, I thought I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, I'll stack shelves in Tesco's. I can only imagine that Tesco's need lots of shelf stacks and pay really well for it. They probably don't, but that's the backup plan, and it's been there for knocking on 18 years now. But then some businesses I'll go into and they've got that strategy. They know where they are, they know what they need to do, and the IT is part of that strategy. I was chatting to one company, they provide software to manufacturers. So their end users obviously have their, hopefully, ducks in a row, but need the software to help them with their manufacturing processes. So that strategy, their strategy is getting the software in. And then for that company, who I've been chatting to, they want to ensure that the software and the hardware they provided is supported. So we're chatting to them about how do we help their strategy of ensuring that they're offering the complete package. We slot in to be the hardware support team, and we help them push forward from there. So their strategies maintaining a high level of service for their customer base, and their customer base's strategy is making sure that they're using the right tools and the right people for the right production.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jack, you touched on vision and mission earlier. In my experience, a lot of small businesses sort of find that a bit of a wishy-washy thing to do, and it's a corporate thing. Then most of their experience, if they come from corporate, is the vision and mission of corporate BS, shall we say? So what are your thoughts on that? Is it important to have a vision and mission for a smaller business, and what benefits and advantages does that bring if a business does that?
I think the vision is the most important thing to have. So because everything else underpinning it, it's where are you going, isn't it? It's where do you want to be, so that you're pointing everything in the right direction. It's also what inspires you. It's what makes you get up in the morning and pitch up, isn't it? And if you're involving, especially when you're involving staff, if they know where you're going, they can buy into that as well. So there's lots of reasons for it, but it also is the platform that you start looking at all the other things that you need to do in the business, like Chris was saying, your IT strategy. If you've got a vision to be a bigger company and grow and expand, if your vision is to be international or national, then you're going to need different types of IT than if you're just a little standalone business with a local personal touch. It's going to be different, isn't it? So you need that vision, and you need to know where you're going for lots of reasons, both operational and practical, but also inspirational and keeping you going. So I always start, whenever I'm working with a client, start with where their vision is.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, some people do think it's wishy-washy and navel gazing and that type of thing. But actually, when you break it down and you ask the right questions of people, then they start to see the value.
Mari.
Oh, this is, I'm in the process of actually writing, I'm delivering a vision, mission and values workshop tomorrow. So this couldn't be more timely really for me. And I think I find it always a really interesting conversation. I'm not a big fan of a waffly vision or mission statement. And I think quite often if the vision statement is clear, there is no need for a mission. I always describe it as the vision is where you're going, what you're aiming for, and in an ideal world, that should be something you never actually achieve. It's something you're striving for. Now, obviously, if your plan is to exit the business, then that's for you personally. Your vision isn't endless, but it may be for the business that you want to create a business that will, that will stand the test of time. Infinite, I think, is Simon Sinek's word for it. Mission is what all the soldiers do to get you there, basically, and values is, for me, is also really important. Is understanding what's important to you, and again, I always say to people, that's the things you are not prepared to negotiate on. The things that you will. And again, for me, because everything I do relates to teams, if you don't have, as a business, you don't have a clear vision and you don't know what your values are, how can you communicate that to the people who work for you? How can they help you on that journey if they don't know where you're going? So for me, it's really important thing to define as a business, and the values is quite an interesting one. If you're an established business, I would always recommend you ask people what words they would use to describe the business. You get some interesting feedback, but ultimately it will narrow down the selection of words. And I also think you can get very tied up in, I only have 3 words, it's my values. I felt it was important that I should have values for my business. But all of them are open to personal interpretation. So one word can actually, so trust is a massive one for me, and it relates to all of the elements of teamwork, but also me personally as a coach. But it can mean lots of things to different people. I trust you, you trust me, I trust in the logic, the governance, the process. So I think, it's important to do what's right for you, but actually have the conversations and think about it, really, more than anything.
I think in my experience, in the corporate world, that there was a disconnect between the sort of generals that were making the visions and the frontliners that we know on the phones talking to customers. So I think it's important to be able to get that, I guess, vision, mission and values to permeate through a company, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, people always say to me, oh, well, I need to give this to the marketing team so they can get it out in the world. And I'm like, you need to get it inside. This is where this works most. People always say your mission statement is something your customers and your suppliers can relate to, because it's about the standards to which you deliver the strategy, the vision. But with values and vision, I think that's quite strong internally, and people should be able to say, I know where we're going, I know what we're aiming for, because that's how you get employee engagement. And in the current employment market, little things like that are really important. You've got to show why you're different, and otherwise people won't come work for you.
And they've got to see the relevance, haven't they, of what they're doing to that end vision as well.
Yeah, I mean, what Jackie does with the green network, there's a rising desire from employees to understand the company's commitment to the environment and where it stands and what its aims are for the future and how it's going to improve its performance.
Yeah, Adam Payne's just made a comment. Not something I've come across, a sheen cannery, but I guess don't know whether any of you are familiar with that. We'll have to get Adam on next time. So thanks for tuning in, Adam. So Chris, when you went through the exercise of forming data sets, did you start with vision and mission, or was that something that you evolved, or how did it come out? Or do you have either a vision or mission statement?
If we do, it's not very well communicated. So I'd probably say no, we don't. It's we do try and be trusted. Murray's trust is a really good word. Integrity, I think, is another really good one. Yeah, we do try to be that trusted partner to our clients and prospective clients. But no, we've never sat down and looked at getting a mission statement. But I think it's something that does evolve. And I think Adam, what he said, if you've got staff, it's something everyone needs to buy into. It's all very well you as the business owner or part of the management team having these, but if your goals and vision don't align with what the staff think, or other staff don't align with yours, then you're backwards pedaling up a hill. It's not going to work as quick as it should do.
I think it's an interesting exercise for me when I rebranded to try and establish, what the Now Business community was about. And I think I went to my existing clients and just asked them, I think, for 3 to 5 words that sort of describe their experience, not a phrase, just isolated words, just to sort of see if there was any consistency in terms of my perception of what I thought the business was about and actually the perception of what the clients were about. And lucky enough, there was a fair bit of alignment between what I was hoping to achieve in terms of my vision and the experience of my clients at the time. And I think with rebranding, it's an important time to look at your strategy going forward and what you want to achieve. Otherwise, the exercise becomes pretty pointless. It's more of a name change rather than a something strategic within the business. So yes, it was interesting to, I guess, see that some of my values were coming through in people's experience of engaging with me. So useful exercise. So if anybody is a bit fearful of looking at strategy, if that's not necessarily to use that word, what would your recommendations be? How would they go about the first steps of maybe taking a more strategic view of their business? Jackie?
Well, they can hire me to help them.
Other coaches are available.
Our other coaches are available. I think it's important to have somebody to help you with it. It's really easy to go down your own tunnel if you're trying to do this on your own. So getting somebody who will give you an objective and view of what you're planning and can help you with the roadmap of planning it out, because it can develop into just navel gazing, or you can be totally unrealistic or underestimate what you're capable of doing. So having somebody else to provide that challenge, knowledgeable challenge on what you're planning to do, I would say is the most important thing to getting started. And there are, on the small business sort of circuit, there are lots of people who can provide that, and it's finding someone who suits you. So it isn't just me.
Chris, any thoughts about how you sort of start this process?
Well, to save using the F-bomb, I'll just say JFD. And Jackie's right. It's finding someone you can relate to. I've had a few coaches on and off over the last 17, 18 years, and probably far more mentors than I realise.
They're all out of therapy now, though, aren't they?
Almost. Another week. One's got 1 week left. And it's not necessarily, you know, it's not necessarily someone who you're paying. And I take you, for instance, Paul, I pay you to be a member of the business community, which is great. I don't pay you on a Friday night to sit around drinking alcohol, talking rubbish. Save the S problem there.
That's just part of the service. That's just part of the service, Chris.
And I'm grateful for that. And you know, you've given some really good advice in those drunken moments, which you may or may not remember. But you know, sometimes it can just be the people you meet, and you can be sat around having a coffee with someone and just go, do you know what, I'm really struggling with X in my business at the moment. And chances are we've all probably gone through something similar at some point in our business process that we'll have a maybe not the solution, but something you can adapt. So yes, speak to someone, whether it's Jackie, Mari, or apparently there are other coaches available who are not on the on this call.
Thanks, Chris. Much appreciated. Mari, your thoughts? Where do people start?
Sorry, in the comments, Adam's made some really valid points around the structures and the processes that you can use. For me, as somebody quite consistently says to me, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm.
And I think particularly in small and sort of growing businesses, you start with an idea and that goes, you know, that takes off. I mean, obviously if it fails, then you've not got so much to worry about. But if it's successful, then you kind of tend to create a little bit of you can have a tendency to create an echo chamber around you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so your family, you'll get support from people that you don't want it from, and people will give you advice left, right, and centre.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, sometimes it's about having that person in the business, or that person that you speak to, be it business coach, mentor, trusted friend, critical friend. That's what I like to call it. Who doesn't say you should do this, but says, have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the starting point. But then it's great to have somebody to lead the process of looking at your business more strategically with you. And it depends. I mean, if you've got 3 or 4 co-founders, then you can probably guarantee that between you can do it. But it's still useful to have somebody who pushes the right buttons and makes sure that, you know, you actually get something solid out of some of the conversations, because quite often we can get drawn off on a tangent regarding something in the day-to-day, and we drop the strategic mindset, really.
So just to put you on the spot, because you're the business book lady,
Yeah.
is there anything that you would direct people towards that may be useful in their journey of sort of creating a strategy and a way forward for their business?
Where would I go? I mean, I think The Infinite Game is a good read. It feels a little far off for a small business, because it is about, you know, your vision would be changing the world. I'm a big fan of Traction, in terms of the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Just because I think it gives you a framework and a way of looking at how other businesses are being run successfully, and it might inspire you to find some things that you could do differently.
Mm-hmm. Jackie, any recommendation for you, business book wise? I know you're quite widely read as well.
Yes, I quite like people who help you see differently. One of my favourite authors is a business psychologist called Adam Grant, and I like his stuff because it is about challenging your thinking. So that type of reading, I like. I think different things suit different people.
Mm-hmm.
But that I tend to look at it from a very sort of from the person's point of view. So, you know, how are you going to think differently about your business, or how are you going to play that in. One of the things is there's so many business books around now, aren't there, that you can get a bit sort of swamped with everybody's bright new model or bright new idea they have. But when you come down to it, by the time you get to chapter 3, they're all saying the same thing. That's my experience.
Yeah, well, I've definitely seen that, you know, over the years.
So yes, I've read this in another book.
Yeah, you certainly get an overlap. So the one that I've recently written, his name is going to escape me. Is it Clockwork, Mari? Michael Makovich, or whatever his name is. Not Clockwork. Anyway, it's a book that does give you a sort of process in which to sort of follow. What I've found useful, building on Adam's comment about use your inner circle. So quite a number of times, and back in the last year, just to help me with direction, because as has been touched on, if it's just you in the business, you don't know all the answers, you don't know what you don't know, and to get sort of someone's external viewpoint is very useful. And what I found beneficial to me is to go out to my existing community and say, look, I'm looking for half a dozen people that are willing to give up a couple of hours of their time just to look at these issues within the business. And I think what was beneficial with that is, well, firstly, I'm flattered that people would come forward and offer their time to support my business, but also because of the number of people that came, I was able to make it quite a diverse group as well, because you touched on the echo chamber, Mara. You know, I will always get the usual suspects that will come and offer me support, but I think we're too close and we're too in it together that, you know, you're just going to be bouncing around ideas that you already know that isn't going to be anything different. So yes, it was quite useful, or very useful actually, for the people that did it last time to give such a, you know, it's quite, you feel quite vulnerable because you're opening up your business to scrutiny. You know, you're getting 6 critical friends to come in and critique, so it can sometimes be hard to hear, but I think, you know, that's all you can do really, is just get that feedback in the absence of either engaging a coach or a mentor or whatever. I think, you know, just use your inner circle. Be careful not to, you know, for it not to be an echo chamber, but get people that are really going to give you some good you know, options and viewpoints on your business. So I highly recommend that. Mm-hmm. So any other comments on our topic of strategy before we wrap this up?
I suppose the only other thing I would say is, just following on from what you said, is one of the things that people quite often say to me is, because I am not in the day-to-day, I'm apolitical. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something in terms of getting that other opinion, is somebody who it doesn't matter to them either way. They're just there for you and to get the best for you or for your business, whichever you want them to do, however you want them to present. But yes, be strategic. Take the time. That would be my takeaway.
Okay. Anybody else before we wrap it up?
No, I think Mara's already touched it. It really comes down to take the time, or as I said earlier, JFD. Okay. If you don't do it, then you're either happy just plodding along and not getting there as quick as you want to get there, or you just really do need to realise you need to go and do it.
Okay. Anything from you, Jackie, before we wrap up?
Yeah, do it. Do remember to do it more than once.
Yeah, it is something that changes over time.
Strategy isn't a big thing that you write up and it gets buried somewhere in your files online or in a cupboard somewhere. It's about reviewing it and looking at it all the time. So, you know, setting time aside when you will do that frequently would be my advice, and it should be more than once a year.
I think the last 2 years have really proved that people's strategy of how they're going to do anything would have changed massively in the last 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, if you're not there looking at it and adapting, I mean, no one could have predicted the last 2 years, I don't think. But you know, you've got to have that flexibility, so it does need reviewing constantly.
Okay, we'll end it there. Thank you very much for coming on, particularly Chris, who was the last minute stand-in, not expecting to be in this, but he was. So we'll end the broadcast there.